You know what?
All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining another APIM webcast. Today, our topic is using DevSecOps with CA APIM and Privilege Access Management. On the phone today, we have Jeremy Suantilla. He is a Senior Principal Consultant for Pre-Sales with the APIM product. He's going to be walking you through the product today. He has a few slides, but it's mostly going to be a demo. We're going to see the product live in action. If you have any questions as we're going through the session today, you can feel free to put them in the Q&A box that's located in the right-hand panel of your WebEx screen. If you don't see it maximized, you can click the blue box with the question mark in it at the top right, and that'll maximize the question and answer box. If you put your questions in there, we'll get to them at the end of the session today. And we'll also be opening up the line for verbal questions at the end. So if you have a question you'd rather ask over the phone, you can hold them until the end, and I'll let you know how to unmute your line at that time. At the end of the session, we'll also be doing a poll. If you could stick around and let us know what you thought of the topic today. We like to take your feedback when planning out future sessions. So just let us know what you thought, and we will use that feedback in the future. I think we're ready to get started now, so I'm going to turn the call over to Jeremy. Jeremy, you can take it away.
All right. Good morning, everybody. So today we're going to cover the topic of what I like to say is supercharging your DevSecOps. To do this, we're utilizing an integration between the CA PAM product and then also our CA APIM product suite. This is allowing us to kind of extend the capabilities of both of them, where CA PAM can be used as your credential store, just your store for any kind of sensitive details and information, and the gateway can be used as a method to poke into PAM, get this information out, and then construct responses appropriate for whatever interface, i.e. like a RESTful interface that may be with third party, a configuration file, or similar is required. So you can do this all on the fly. Some of the use cases I'll be demonstrating today will be related to easing the PAM API usage and increasing security. By default, it's a pretty basic security model. It just utilizes an API key and it can provide some SSL enforcement. We're able to do this by adding our threat protection, and we can do this by adding our whitelist, blacklist for IP ranges. We can provide additional authentication methods, inspection of the requests, and so on. The second thing I'll be showing is how to reset a password in the PAM client and then have it update an external API using HTML v2. So this is essentially, we'll be logged into the PAM client. I will be resetting a password through that PAM client. It will then send a request to the gateway. The gateway will then take that HTML v2 payload, extract out the credentials from it, rewrite the request to meet the third-party API's format, and then reach into that API and update the password account. This is more of an example of how you could use PAM and a gateway to basically update a password in PAM, send to the gateway, and then the gateway could go touch one system or 100 different systems. And they can all be different unique types and have unique requirements for their APIs or connectors. And because the gateway has very simple policy language, it allows it to be compatible across all of them. The next topic we will be creating a JBoss server configuration file on the fly. And this will be using a small bootstrap script that will make a curl request to the gateway. It will provide header details of which environment it is in, i.e. QA versus dev. The gateway then has knowledge of which credentials does it extract from PAM for each environment. And then it will then return back the username and password details for a JDBC connection. Will then create a configuration file for JBoss, and then it will start the JBoss service and allow it to then have the correct credentials for JDBC connections for that particular QA or dev environment. The next example, we will be using similar, but I will be making a request from a command line on a host that has Docker enabled, and we'll actually be building the YAML configuration file on the fly. So essentially, similar to the JBoss example, but now we're going to go and get the username and password for a gateway, so the admin username and password, the credentials for the MySQL server that's used by the gateway to store all of its configuration details, And then, of course, it also has the ability to know if it's on QA or dev. So it will also then pull down a different host name and similar, and then use this to build the configuration file, the YAML configuration file that can then be started on the fly. And then the last example I'll be showing is how you can increase the security or your overall approval methods by having the gateway intercept a request that's bound for PAM and then check it against a help desk and make sure that there's a ticket that exists. And then if it exists, allow the request to go through. If it doesn't, just provide a simple message saying, please create a ticket before putting this request in. This is just an example of how the gateway can be used to further orchestrate your overall requests coming in and out of PAM, or even just log them. Because, we could have it, instead of checking a ticket, creating a ticket and providing a specific update in the field as necessary. All right. So for the first example, I'm going to just show you the actual policy on my gateway. So this is a gateway. It's running version 9.3. There's really nothing special required for integration between PAM and a gateway, other than just having knowledge of how the PAM API works. One of our peers in the security team was able to provide me access to his existing PAM instance, which is associated here, PAM3 CA Cybersecurity. And then I was able to log in and create all the user accounts and everything else necessary. I'll be able to show you those in a moment. This is a pretty simple policy. We're just setting some context variables. I'm creating a username. I have a password. These are the credentials for the PAM server. In this example, I just have them as context variables, but I could also use the gateway secure password storage method to store these credentials, and that way they're not exposed within the policy itself. We're then going through, I unhooked the ability to check against a risk engine. So if we wanted to, we could have these requests sent off to a risk engine to get a score to determine if we should allow these requests to pass or fail. I'm using a whitelist and blacklist, so I'm allowing my home IP range and I'm allowing callbacks from the same IP range where this gateway is running. I have some threat protection, so we're checking the payloads, the message size. We're also going and limiting the time of day. So let's just say that this is enterprise, and really requests like this should only be occurring from Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. This allows us to restrict that, which in some cases is useful, for other use cases may not be. Then I'm collecting some context variables for requests, which will be name parent, which is the application name. So this is the application name that I'm going to check against PAM to see if it exists. And there's a record within PAM, and if it exists, it will then go and extract it. Do I want to reset the password? In this case, for this example, no. Or do I want to show the password? In this case, it will maybe yes. All right. So anybody who's familiar with PAM, to get something as simple as a password, you have to do 4 API calls. And then from each API call, you need to have some details from the previous one to get the next bit of data. So in this example, I have to first go and call against PAM and do a search for any device name related to my app name. So in this case, it'll be Splunker. It will then go check through the PAM database and look for an account called Splunker. And if it does, it will then return a device ID, which is just an integer value. I then use that value to populate my next request, which is going and it's going to find out the target applications. This will then give me an application ID, which I could then use. It's another numeric value. In this case, it's going to be four characters. I then use that to make the next request, which is then going and getting me the target accounts. Now, this is the actual username or user account that I need to put the credentials for. Once I have that account ID, I can do the fourth request against PAM, give the reason code and anything else required. And then from there, I'm able to get the password, the username, and the credential ID. And then I'm able to format it into a very simple response type. Because this is a gateway, I could, modify this response type to meet any format that's required. It can be XML, it can be JSON, it can be textual, it can be some special format of textual. So if you're working with a third-party system or API, it's very easy to meet the requirements, and you don't need any special connectors. All right, so now I'll just execute a request against it. here to my trusty shell. So I'm just using curl on my command line here. I'm going to say reset pass no, and show pass equals yes. And if I have everything correct, it should connect to my gateway. The gateway will then connect to the PAM host, and it will get the username and password for the Splunker account. All right. And you can see down here, the password is fish tacos, the account name is Splunker, and the credential ID is 1015. So if I come into actual PAM, and I go down to the Splunker account here, I can then tell it to show the password, which is fish tacos, right? So if I come here and I change it to say beef tacos, make sure I don't have that. Yeah. Update it there. If I do the request again, you can now see it's beef tacos. So it's very simple. Instead of having to do 4 API calls just to get a password, all I'm doing is one simple one. I'm providing the application name, which is just simply a hint of the device name, and then it's able to then drill down into the PAM API and get additional information and make it very simple. All right, so that's just a very simple example of how we can integrate with PAM and provide more threat protection, more quality in the return types and the response types, because you may be working with different systems that want only specific attributes or fields. And in this case, I just have the, the username and password, but the PAM has a lot more details within their API, and I could add additional details to these responses as needed. Okay. So that's the first use case, is just basically, adding increasing security and creating easier interactions with it. The next one I'm going to show you is how to reset a password with the PAM client and external API. Now, I will warn you that this is going to create an error message, and I have been trying to work with the PAM team on getting the appropriate response, but for some reason, my gateway is not providing the correct response back to PAM, so PAM thinks that it did not synchronize correctly, but in fact it is synchronized correctly. And once I get the correct SPML v2 response, a message from the PAM dev team, our gateway can provide it, and then you wouldn't see any error message whatsoever. But to begin, let's just see what the current password is. It's barfoo, so I should be able to log into my Splunk host here. Okay, log out. Now, I did change this externally earlier, so it's going to probably fail here. I'll use barfoo. Okay, so it's set right now to barfoo, so let's go back, close this, and then I need to make sure that I have it to tell it to update both the password authority server and the target system. The target system in this case is my gateway, and then my gateway has the knowledge to know to go and reach out to my Splunk host, which is here, and utilize its API to then go and reset the password. All right, so if I go, and we'll just change this to foobar. Hit OK. All right, so this is the error message I was telling you about correctly. I was telling you about this is because my gateway did not provide back the correct response. But if I look at the gateway logs, it will then show that actually was successful. So I come back here, foobar, it shows I didn't do it correctly. All right, Well, I obviously have something wrong there, so let's just try a different way. We set the password there. And it shows it still be tacos. All right, so I have obviously done something wrong there, and that's not working correctly. But before my demo, I was able to come into here, essentially put in any password credentials. I hit OK, and then because I have it set to update both the PAM host and the target system, the gateway will then take that SPML message, extract out the user credentials, and then use that to go, which is here, and then update the PAM server host. And how we're doing that in policy is we're essentially taking the SOAP message that's being sent from the PAM server, and then using that to extract out the username and password details that were provided in it. And then I'm going and using that to build up a special message body that PAM requires for their particular API, where the password is part of a message body, and the username is provided as part of the header values. And then sending that request to the PAM server using the API credentials that the PAM server, the Splunk server requires, and is then going and taking the ID name that I provided, in this case would be Splunker. It's then taking the message body, which would then contain the password, and which then goes and updates the password on the PAM server, and then you're able to access that resource. The idea is that, I have all this, policy here to extract out the username and password, and then just update in one account. Well, it could be Splunk, it could be, 3, 4, 10, 20, or 100 different third-party services that I'm trying to update. So that means I could be updating Salesforce here, I could be updating, half a dozen other cloud providers, I could be logging into other servers that are supported by the gateway policy language and update their accounts. This means that I don't then have to wait on the PAM development team to create a connector between the PAM server and that third-party service. Where PAM isn't really built for that kind of stuff, the gateway is built for that, and you have that flexibility to be able to integrate with a bunch of other third-party systems. And then if anybody is interested in seeing this actually operating, or if you're from the PAM team, you can help me get the response message body back in the correct format, then please reach out to me directly after this, and I would be very grateful to get some additional details from you. All right. The next use case I'm going to show you is creating a simple JBoss configuration file on the fly using PAM credentials and smart routing. When I say smart routing, what I mean is we're essentially using details from the header values of the request that's coming in this case here, to determine if I'm in a QA environment or a development environment, a production environment. In this case, I'm just using header values, but this could also be a IP address. It could be some unique identifier about the device. It could be any combination of those. And because the gateway then has the knowledge of knowing that, oh, I have this request coming in and it's equal to QA or is it equal to dev, then send it down the appropriate path depending on which environment variable is provided. We can then construct the correct request that goes to PAM and then know that it should be pulling out the QA credentials versus dev credentials from PAM. And then from there, I can get the correct username and password and then return the template response in the formats required for that script to then extract the details. So this is very similar to the last script I did, but from here, the actual shell script I have running on the application server will extract the password and the account name and then use that to build the XML file for JBoss. So switching over to my shell here. First, we'll just look at the shell script, which is this one here. So get password, and this is going to utilize a standalone XML. You can see here, it's a very simple script. All I'm doing is I'm setting up some environment variables here. I'm doing two pull requests to my gateway server. I'm providing the header value for QA, and then it's taking those details I have, and it's then taking this standalone XML file that I have here, and I have it marked up, and it's doing a search and replace. So it's searching for, 55 my user, and then replacing it with a password that it extracted from the first request, and then 55 my pass, which it also extracted from the request. To create the server configuration file, and then I'm just using screen to start the service up as per its normal documentation, and it's good to go. All right, so before I do that, I'm just going to show you the standalone script. So you can see here, it's a very simple JDBC connection. So I'm connected to one of my JBoss servers, my MySQL servers I have hosted within Amazon. And then it's going to go and it's going to search out for the username and replace it, and the password here and replace it. Now, I'm providing the QA header value, but if I provide the dev header value, it would then be able to go and extract out the dev credentials and provide them. Now, this is just an example using a simple JDBC connection, but anybody that's worked with application servers know that there's a lot of different credentials that may need to be required. And utilizing PAM and the gateway, you're able to talk to one or many systems and get all that details on the fly and build these files, real time. And this then means that I'm not putting usernames or passwords into any of my repository files. So anything that I publish to a GitHub or to a Subversion system, or even just providing to different team members through email or other SharePoint sites, none of that actually has credentials in it anymore. This is just markups that are utilized by PAM to get the information out and replace it real time. So I'm going to execute the script now. I'm using the -x command here, which just basically makes it more verbose, so we'll be able to see everything going. Okay, so you can see here it executed. We went through, did the first request against the PAM server with app name JBoss. It got back that the user account is QA JDBC. It then did the second request, and it got back that the password is fried pickles. We then went and started up an application server. In this case, it's JBoss. So if I do screen-list, let's see, I have two. Hopefully I get the first one right. Yeah, we can see here this is one of the JBoss servers already starting. So let's kill this one here, and let's do this other one. Yep, no JBoss server. So in this case, let's just do it all over again. See, we have no screens. Run script again. Screen-x. And we can actually see it's now booting. And as the screen goes by, we'll see that it's actually going to connect to my JDBC server. And this is just an example. So if you have like other scripting tools like Ansible, Jenkins, Chef, Puppet, you name it, think of the ways that you could further enhance them and your overall environment by not having to hard code values, not having to have multiple copies of configuration files or application server files and all that, and instead just having templates, where all the actual credentials and sensitive data is stored within PAM, and then the gateway is utilized as more of a smart router to determine which credential details need to be pulled down. So to just kind of further show this, go back to PAM here. And you can see here I have my dev JDBC and I have my QA JDBC. I can say show the credentials here, fried pickles. And if I come down to my dev JDBC, it's sweet pickles. So if I wanted to, I could kill this here, and then let's just copy it. change this to dev. And then let's also change my database that I'm actually connecting to. All right, and then now I can just do the same script. And we can see here, I now pull down my development username and my development password here. And then it's now starting up that server and is connecting to my development database. So I actually have my database servers opened up here. And like, here's my dev JBoss. And actually, as this, because this is the first time this one is starting, it should actually, if I go into screen, show that it's going to start populating the tables as required. But then I also have my QA JBoss, which shows all the details right there as needed for this application server to run. So it just shows you how easy it is to kind of move it from a QA environment, dev environment, and all they had to do is just provide a simple header value to the script, and it was then able to boot up and run. All right, so I'm just going to close that out. So that was the example of utilizing our gateway to then extract out a header value and then identify, is this a QA, or is this a dev, or is this production, or is this data center 1, data center 2, or any mixture of those, and then reach into PAM, get those additional details. We could also reach into a help desk, create a ticket saying that this system has been started XYZ here. We could reach into a certificate store, pull out, an SSL key and certificate and install those in the application servers. I could, reach into some other repository, figure out, let's say, what LDAP servers I should be authenticating against and create those. It's a bunch of information that the gateway has the ability to collect and then provide back that your bootstrap scripts and your automation tools can then further take those and create more automation in your overall environment. All right, so the next one I'm going to show is how to do something very similar, but we're going to use a Docker image. So let me go back to my shell here. Now, I'm on just a standard Linux VM. It's the AWS Linux. I have Docker installed, so I'm going to get rid of this Docker compose file. I do already have my SSG gateway license already installed here, copied up here, and that's just for easy use. And then I can do a simple command that will allow me to go and get the correct configuration file. So before I actually run this, I'm going to show you it in SOAP UI. Hopefully the font isn't too small here, but you can see here I'm just doing a query against my gateway. My service endpoint is one I call the PAM configurator. I need to give it an application name. In this case, it's my SSG server, so I'm going to pull down a configuration file that can be used to boot up a gateway, and then I need to provide the header value of QA or dev. So right now it's set to QA. If I run this, it returns a template response with the QA credentials, which shows that my username is QA.ssg, my password, and the URL constructed. I'm going to go against my QA database. The database username is QA-JDBC, and here's the password, host name, et cetera, et cetera. These details are actually stored in PAM. So if I go to PAM, you can see here I have a QA SSG, and then I also have a dev SSG. And each of these then have the unique credentials. But I'm using a combination of calls because I'm making calls to both my SSG account and my JDBC account so that I can have both the username and password to set for my policy manager, but then also the password to set for my cluster password for the gateway, and then also the JDBC credentials for this particular gateway to use, because as it's moving through different parts of its life cycle, it may need different credentials, and this allows me to automate that. The actual policy is right here. So again, I'm just setting some context bars. I'm then able to, that's not something I want to show yet. I'm able to, if I wanted to, hand it off to a risk engine to do a risk score and check. I can, do further enhancing of restricting IP address ranges, time of day, et cetera, like I showed earlier. So that's only increases security. But then this is where the heavy lifting is being done. Is I'm doing a number of calls against the PAM interface to get the credentials out for both my SSG account and also for all my JDBC connections. So you can see here all the ones related to JDBC. Then down below here, all the ones related to my SSG. And then in this case, I'm creating the entire configuration file on the fly. So you can see here, it's my whole YAML file. But then I have it set up with context vars. So as this information is extracted, it is then populated in this configuration file, and then it can be downloaded and executed real time. You could, really just have it provide the credentials and have the Docker host construct it, or you could expand this further, if you know YAML, and have a lot more details in there. So actually showing it running, I have it here right now for QA. If I show this or change this to dev, you can see now that my dev credentials have been populated. So it says dev SSG, dev JDBC, and then the password has changed again. I'll show you again, because this will change from sweet pickles to fried pickles. You can see here as well. All right, so that's just running in within SOAP UI, which is good for testing and all that, but it's not real world. So now it's running here. This is actually my Docker host. All right. So now let's look at the Docker Compose file I created. You can see here, this is the exact same file I created there. And I can just do Docker Compose. Up. And then just pulling down the images from the CA repository for the gateway. This again is just the gateway. This could be the micro gateway. This could be anything, the portal. Or any system that uses a repository like this as well. So this will take a moment to complete. While that's running, you see here that it's going to do a connection to my dev SSG database. And if anybody who's familiar with our gateway, they'll know that on the first boot, they'll actually go and create the database. So you can see here right now it's empty. But once this actually boots up and runs, it's going to connect to this dev SSG database. It's going to populate the database with the correct details, and it'll be up and running. If this database already was existing, and let's just say I was scaling things up, it would go and it would allow it to go and excuse me here. Find address already in use. Oh, I know what I did wrong here. Well, I went and I started our Live API Creator tool, which is part of my next use case, and it's listening on port 8080. So let me just change this real quick from 8080 to 8081. I'll rerun my compose file creation. You see here, it is using the correct ports now. And let's try Docker up again. Okay, so you can see here now it's actually booting up, and it's waiting for the databases to come up. So if I come back to my database server, we'll start seeing that these tables will start to be created and populated. Right, so you see the database is now being created. All right, and this will just take a moment to boot up. So while that's happening, let's start another policy manager. Make sure that's the right IP. 201, all right, and then my password should be 7-layer with DevSSG as my user account, but I still need to wait for this to start up. This may take a moment or two, but I'm just trying to show you some of the different examples here. Let's see if I have my QA SSG empty. Yeah. All right, so we see here the gateway is now starting. Within another minute or so, it'll be fully running. And in this case, it's also installing our REST band interface, but if you were able to attend Eric Day's webinar last month, he was able to do things like also include our OAuth toolkit and RAS or a bunch of other additional solution kits and bundles and everything else. So you can see how you could use tools like this to further enhance your automation tools for your DevSecOps. And then keeping in mind that, again, that as the gateway has the ability to know that I'm going to different environments, I can pull down different versions of OTK. I can pull down different versions of bundles. I can pull out different credentials as needed. And this doesn't just have to be for gateways. It's really anything that's in a container. I'll be starting here in a moment. If I was on television, I'd be getting yelled at right now for having dead air. So I'll figure out a way to stop that.
We do have a question in the Q&A if you want to take that while we're waiting.
Sure.
Okay, so we have a question from Ashok. In order to connect to PAM through API, we have to provide PAM admin credentials. How can we pass the passwords, as we should not hard code the passwords into the code?
Well, in my example, I had them kind of hard coded. In one of them I showed, but in another one, I believe it's this one here. Let me see. I'm using our secure password storage. So the gateway has the ability to store the credentials in its key store and then create them as context variables on the fly. But this then eliminates them being recorded in any logs and any part of the transaction. So that way I can eliminate the need to have it set as a context variable up here, which is, you can see in this case it's removed. Did that answer the question? And we don't have to use a PAM admin account. This is just the account I was provided. So you could use any account that really has read access to the password credentials or whatever level of access you want to give it, because the PAM API does allow for the creation, the update, and the deletion of credential details, and there's no reason why it can't be bidirectional. So you have one system sending requests to create stuff through the gateway, pass up the PAM, create those accounts or update those accounts, or vice versa. Have them created in PAM and have them sent out to the gateway, and the gateway then goes and talks to those other systems. Was there any other questions? Nope. Okay, so I'm going to try and connect here. I'm not sure if it's loaded or not, but looks like it is. Should be 7 layer. All right, well, I'm giving it user username and password here, or it's not running yet. But anyways, if you go through the whole process here, it boots up, it runs, it installs the password. We can see here it actually is supposed to change the dev SSG, updated change password expiry, and the password itself. But for some reason, the password I just gave it, it's not working. And it could just be a typo on my part. I could try the admin account, and it should not even exist. Of course, the prove me wrong is probably going to work here. Okay. So you can see here it's connected. Or, no, I connected to the wrong server. This is 54, 245. Sorry, I connected to the wrong host. So let's try this again. dev.ssg, 7 layer. Okay, so now this actually shows that I was able to connect with the dev username and password, and this is the gateway I just stood up. I would have to install some licenses before I can actually use this one, but as Eric Dave showed in his previous examples, it's really easy to actually have them install valid licenses and everything else. So let me shut this down, disconnect it there, come back here to my shell. I'm going to kill this one. And then let's just get rid of this Docker Compose. I'm going to change this to now be QA. It should be Docker. And now it should be connecting and using my QA credentials. And I won't show you all the details related to this one, but you can see here it's going to the QA now. It's going to go in my QA database, which is currently empty, but just like the last examples, it will start booting up and be working. Again, just to show us a real quick example of how by just providing a header value, I can extract the particular environment details for that application server or that container. It does not have to be a header value. It can be really any unique identifier related to that system or a combination of them. All right. So I'm going to allow that to run in the background, and then I'm going to go back to our last use case before we open to any other questions. In this case, it is checking against a help desk for a ticket status before allowing the PAM request to go through. The idea is you don't want people to just go and change username and passwords without having some sort of audit trail. The idea is that the person will go first and open up a ticket within the service desk or help desk, that this service desk or help desk has some sort of API interface or similar console that the gateway can communicate with. In my example, I just created a help desk utilizing our Live API Creator tool. I created a database and just put some basic details in it, and then that's supposed to just kind of emulate the help desk. So if I come here, I have tickets. You can see here I have some are true and some are false for this particular owner. So it's my SUOJE01 and SUOJE02, kind of the unique identifiers. So what will happen is as I do this request, the gateway is going to go check against my help desk and then see if the status is true or false. And if it's true, allow it to continue processing and update the password. If it's false, it's going to go through and it's going to deny it and tell them to open up a help desk ticket. So let me show you that policy before we begin. So you can see here, it's basically I'm copying a lot of the same policy over and over again, with the heaviest one being used is my PAM one, but that's the one I showed you first that does those 4 or 5 API calls to get all the details. I then have basically 2 routes set up, a good route and a bad route. So this one's going to go to a user account where it's set true. This one's going to go to a user account where it's set to false. All right. So once it's true or false, if it's true, it allows the request to continue. If it's false, then it will go and it will just return a temporal response telling the person to go open up a help desk ticket. Right. And then if it's true, again, we go get the username and password from PAM, extract out the password and the account name. I then go and construct the message for our external API, or our external system, which in this case, again, is Splunk. Create the username and password to change. I send a request to the Splunk API to then go update the Splunk or user account in this case, and we're good to go from there. All right, so we're in SOAP UI now. I'm going against the reset pass desk service endpoint, which is what I just showed you. The account name is Splunker that we're going against. And I can just go here. It happens really fast, you can't really see anything. But if I go and try this in the command line, I'll change this to reset pass help desk. Reset pass help desk. I'll reset the desk. Okay, so it's gone and it said, it's checked, is this account valid? And said yes. And then it was able to go through and change the password on Splunk. Now, if I change my policy to use the one that's going to fail, and I disable the good one, run the same command, should get a different message. So it checked against my help desk and said that, well, your ticket doesn't exist. Go create a ticket, then we'll go and execute the rest of this actual policy or this request that will actually then get sent to PAM and update the password there as well. So let's see, Splunker account, which should be this one here. Beef tacos. Go log into Splunk. All right, I can log in correctly there. Let's go back here again. And I'm going to change the password in PAM. And let's just pork tacos. All right, so again, log out here. if I come back to my command line, or this could be SOAP UI or it could be an automation script or whatever, get taught to go through and reset the path again. But before I do that, I need to make sure that I have my bad route disabled, my good route enabled, because I was a good enterprise citizen and I did open up a help desk ticket in advance. All right, so now if I go back to Splunk, I should be able to log in with pork tacos. And that's it. So, you know, I can come change it to any number of accounts or whatever, and it will all work. And the idea here is not really just to work with Splunk by itself, but as an example that, you know, any external API or any external system which allows you to create, update, or delete credentials, you don't have to wait on the PAM development team to create these connectors. You don't have to, you know, wait on them to create any kind of orchestration engines or anything else like that. You can simply have the gateway do that heavy lifting for you to create those special connections, talk to those additional systems, and allow you to basically update the credential on PAM and then have, you know, the gateway go and talk to all those other disparate systems. All right, that covers my last use case. So open up to any questions this time.
Okay, great. So just a reminder, if you have any questions, you can put them into the Q&A box in the right-hand panel of the WebEx screen, or at this point in time, you can unmute your line if you'd like to ask a verbal question. You can click #6 on your telephone keypad to unmute yourself. While we wait for any questions to come in, there are a few in the Q&A box already, and I'll read them out loud now. Joseph asks, can APIM use the PAM A2A client to retrieve credentials? This could eliminate the need to supply PAM admin credentials altogether. If not, this would be a great integration.
Contact me offline and show me how that works, and the answer is most likely yes. It depends if we are required to install any specific agents or other code within the gateway itself is going to be the determining factor on that. I have not tried that one myself yet. Yeah.
Okay. And we'll provide your email at the end of the session today so that they can reach out?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Okay, great. We have another question in from Leandro. Can we have access to the policies and shell scripts created for the examples?
Yes. Contact me offline, and I will be happy to share them on OneDrive, and then anybody else can download them from there. And if you need the example databases and stuff like that, or how I kind of structured it all, because, you know, I have independent database servers, I have gateway servers, I have application servers, and if you want to kind of replicate this all in your environment, just reach out to me and I can walk you through the process.
Okay. Any other questions, either in the Q&A box or on the phone? Okay. If there are no more questions, then I think we'll wrap up for today. So this is part of a session of Webcast that we're going to be scheduling out in the next few months. We're trying to have one per month on a technical topic that's of interest to the community. So if anyone on the line today has any ideas for future topics, please reach out to us and let us know. You can either email me directly or you can post it to the API management community, and we'll take those ideas and collect them and see if we can get a presenter and get it scheduled out for you guys. It's important to us that we conduct sessions that are of value to you. So your feedback on how we did today, there's a poll up, and if you could let us know how the topic was today, and on any future sessions that you'd like to see scheduled out for API management specifically, would be very helpful to us in planning out future sessions. If you do think of a question later on, you can always feel free to reach out to myself or Jeremy, or you can post that to the API management community as well. We have experts that are constantly monitoring that space to make sure we get you answers to all of the questions that you have. Other than that, I just wanted to thank everyone for joining. I want to thank Jeremy for a great presentation today. We'll be posting the recording of today's session to the community later today, along with the Q&A transcript. So you can check out all of that in the API management community by the end of the day today. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, so much. We hope to see you out in the community. Thank you, Jeremy, and I hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.